Hey guys, what's up? Lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss Captain America, the First Avenger. Came out July 22nd, 2011, directed by Joe Johnston. This is another Paramount Marvel release. This is the last Marvel Cinematic Universe film prior to Disney purchasing Marvel. As in, Marvel's The Avengers, which is the film that's after this movie, is the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film moving on. So from 2012 to now, it's always been Disney branded Marvel property, and they've done a fantastic job with, incorporating all the characters and stories and myths, etc. So the movie Captain America starts out with these explorers finding the Hydra ship that Cap happened to be steering into the water so that way the bombs wouldn't, destroy Manhattan as Red Skull's plan, perceived it back in 42, 45, something like that. 1945. Then we have a time lapse back to Norway in 1942 when Red Skull, Schmidt, goes to try to find the Tesseract, which is hidden in this, random town in Norway. We know that the Tesseract is in Norway because of Thor, when they explain that the ice giants, the Asgardians versus the ice giants, have this battle in Norway, near modern day Norway, and the Tesseract was the jewel of Odin's, and he used it as a weapon, and then it happened to just get lost to Norway, and then that's why Norway assimilated to the Norse gods as the Asgardians, right? So the Tesseract has been in Norway ever since that very first battle against the Frost Giants and the Asgardians. So Schmidt retrieves the Tesseract, gets Dr. Zola who's another infamous, Marvel villain, quote unquote, to create Hydra weapons. Hydra is a scientific subdivision of the Nazi Party under Adolf Hitler's control. So Red Skull is in charge of Hydra, basically creating all these weapons to wipe out the world and mold it in, his image, kind of a thing. Whatever. So Steve Rogers, Captain America. Steve Rogers is this scrawny Brooklyn guy who's best friends with Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan. Steve Rogers is obviously, Chris Evans. And what? Steve can't join the military because of all of his physical and, height problems going on, his asthma, his high blood pressure, all that fun stuff. Eventually, a ex-German scientist who is now in charge of a scientific research sect of the U.S. Army comes across him at a Stark Expo, the 1943 Stark Expo, and wants Steve as a test subject, basically, because he shows courage, he shows heart. He doesn't show brute force, he's not a bully. So Steve agrees. They shoot him up with a super soldier serum. Steve is technically the second super soldier. Red Skull would be the first super soldier. So Steve becomes the second super soldier. It works. There's a spy in the ranks. All hell breaks loose. There's an epic running and car chase scene through the streets of Brooklyn. 1943, 1942 is great. It's wonderful. 1943. Steve eventually becomes a part of the military, but in a showman aspect. So he wears a Captain America costume, and he goes out with the, girls to promote selling bonds, so that way the war is funded. Eventually he gets to Italy. He finds out that Bucky's 107th Infantry is taken behind enemy lines, and there's no word if Bucky's alive. So Steve, along the help of Howard Stark, Tony Stark's father, right, and Agent Peggy Carter, who is one of the greatest Marvel characters ever. Peggy Carter. She had an awesome TV show for 2 seasons. It was fantastic. I gotta watch it again. It's fantastic. So the three of them smuggle him in the air to break Bucky and fellow prisoners out of Hydra base, and they steal weapons, and then they capture Zola, and then Steve eventually gets on the ship to defeat Red Skull, and Red Skull grabs the Tesseract, and he clearly can't control the Tesseract because it's an Infinity Stone. So the Tesseract transports him to the place where the Soul Stone is, which we find out from Infinity War. Then he films in years later, which we did actually talk about back when I saw Infinity War. So Howard Stark then retrieves the Tesseract, and then we flash forward 70 years to Nick Fury and Captain America in Times Square saying, "Hey, Cap, you've been asleep for 70 years." And then the post-credit scene is, yeah, I have we have our next mission. And it's a teaser trailer for the Avengers. So it all comes full circle. So that's why this movie was very important, Captain America, the First Avenger. Captain America is very important because one of the little cutscenes at the end, you had a kid with the Captain America shield painted on a garbage can running around the streets of Brooklyn with his friends. And it's important because as long as you show heart, as long as you show courage, you are a captain. You are Captain America. The very first comic of Captain America was him punching Adolf Hitler in the face. And punching Nazis is the American way. So, with all of the lovely white nationalist nonsense going on currently, again, for some reason, and for some reason, there's Nazis still in America. I don't understand. Punching a Nazi is the American way, according to Captain America. So, go Cap. Very, very, very entertaining character, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Chris Evans is a god amongst us mere mortals, obviously. And he is so perfect when it comes to Steve Rogers. Him and Bucky Barnes, that little romance-bromance thing that they have throughout all the films is just so perfect. I'm not leaving you! Oh my god. Kills you. Right at the heart. Right at the heartstrings. Boom, 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 boom. We see him in Captain America Winter Soldier. We see him in Avengers. We see him in Avengers Age of Ultron. We see Captain America Civil War. We see Infinity War. We see him actually very briefly in something. What was it? Thor Ragnarok? I think Loki takes his form briefly. Obviously we're going to see him in Endgame. And are we going to see him after Endgame? We will find out. Very excited. What do you guys think of Captain America, the First Avenger that came out in 2011? Such a wonderful film. I've seen it so many times. So many times. One of my favorite scenes is when him and Peggy are first running in a taxi to get to the antique shop, which is actually the secret headquarters in Brooklyn. And they're talking about dancing, and she's like, "Well, why haven't you danced?" And he's like, "I haven't found the right partner. Or I'm waiting for the right partner." And then she says to him at the end, "Oh, perfect." Mucho mahalo, guys.